Thank you, Isabel, for joining us.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. I feel very honored to join you today. So my name is Isabel, and I'm the country tutor for North America, so for Canada and the United States from the European Studies program. And I teach at European Studies, mainly law and politics courses, so that's a little bit my background. And I want to introduce you today to the university, what we've got on offer for you in terms of courses, but also in terms of other activities around it, and just go through some of the things that I think you should know before applying for an exchange in the Netherlands, and then we'll see what your questions are. So our little program for today is first, where and what is The Hague? I think we can hopefully do this quite quickly, and if not, you'll just type it into Google and you'll find that too. So we'll focus a little bit more on the Hague University European Studies, some of the student perspectives as well that we've collected over the years, and then I'll walk you through the program this way. If you prefer interrupting me and me taking questions in between, that's perfectly fine as well. So we'll just see how it goes. This is our little impression of the Netherlands. So The Hague is obviously located in the Netherlands, and you might have a number of different associations with the Netherlands. I've of course only picked pictures where you see a blue sky. To be honest with you, that barely ever happens at this time around in the year, at least. Our summers are beautiful. The winters are very questionable, I have to be honest. And you can see up here, of course, the Netherlands is famous for so many different things: the wooden shoes, the stroopwafels, the beautiful little snacks, the cheese, the wonderful old houses in Amsterdam, lots of bikes. Biking is the absolute first mode of transportation in the Netherlands. That's quite peculiar and different, I think, to many places in the United States. The royal family, and then something that always hurts a little bit for me to say, the Dutch football team. I'm originally German, so there's a little bit of a competition going on here. Now, where is The Hague? You can see the Netherlands is a really small country in terms of geography, in terms of land size in Europe. In the European Union, it's quite centrally located. So definitely if you're interested in traveling Europe while you're on exchange, seeing different countries and cultures, the Netherlands is a perfect starting point. It's quite easy to take the train into Germany, take the train into Belgium, the train into France, the train to the UK, and also the other countries, of course, are quite easily accessible. The Hague is a city which is located close to the beach, and we love the fact that it's close to the beach because it gives us a lot of outside space and area to move around in a relatively small country. Now, studying in The Hague, I think is quite fabulous, but I'm a little bit biased because I studied here myself for a little while. And it's the third largest city in the Netherlands, and it has at this point 35,000 students. So a couple of years ago when I studied here, it was actually not very much a student city, but it's really developing into a student city. It's getting quite hip and happening, to be honest. There's a lot of international students here, lots of different countries represented in The Hague, and it's really turning into a fabulous, lively place to be around. Now, we have very important things here in The Hague, of course. We have the seat of the Dutch government, which you can see, that's the middle picture on the bottom, which is our parliament here, a beautiful Harry Potter-like building, which is quite open to access as well for people to go and visit. We have the Peace Palace at the bottom left, if you can see that here. That's where the International Court of Justice and the Permanent Court of Arbitration are located. And that's also one of the reasons for why we call The Hague the city of peace and justice, the city of the legal capital of the world. So if you're into law, then this is really the place to be. If you're not, don't worry, there's lots of other things to do that are non-legal related. It's quite a culturally active city. On the top right, you see a house, that's the Maurits House, where some of the most famous Dutch painters' work is exhibited. So for example, the girl with the pearl earring from Vermeer, which you might know. And then very important, I think, we have the beach, which is from university just about 20 minutes by bike. The same with public transport. To be honest, bikes are quicker than public transport, so most students will opt for a bike. And in summer, we have the whole beach full of beach bars, kilometers long. It's a really fun place. The Dutch people are very much what we call in Dutch gezellig. They like being quite together and having fun. They're very easygoing people, very low sense of hierarchy. So it's quite easy to fit in the Netherlands. Okay, yes, I think I've said that. So let's move on. Now, the Hague University is this beautiful building down there. It's a relatively modern building, so quite different to what you might be used to in terms of the outer experience. It's a very open building with lots of glass, and we have actually a number of different campuses. But European studies and the places that you're looking at is really focused in the city center on our main campus, which is that round building with the two random straight buildings next to it. We have 26,000 students, which makes us the biggest university in The Hague. and about 2,000 staff. It's a relatively large university for Dutch standards. Again, extremely international, and especially in European studies, it wouldn't be a surprise if you sat in a classroom and you had people from 12, 13, 14 different nationalities with you in the classroom. We have a lot of Dutch students, but we also have a lot of Dutch students that have a different background. So where one parent comes from somewhere else or they're second generation. And we have a lot of international students coming as degree-seeking students and as exchange students. So that's certainly something you must love. You have to love other cultures and people from all over the world, because that's really quite what we're famous for. Yes, we have bachelor and master programs, but for you, I think mostly interesting are the bachelor programs in European studies. This is where you can see the different campuses. If you're into sports, I do recommend visiting the sports campus. It's one of the state-of-the-art campuses in all of Europe. They got a lot of awards for inside beach volleyball fields and all sorts of things. So there's a lot to be done here if you're into sports. Now, we're looking at the European Studies program mainly. And the university actually has 15 different programs in English, and the rest is all in Dutch. So it's a good mix of international and English-speaking students and Dutch-speaking students. So you get a little bit of the best of both worlds as you're on exchange, I think. The university system in the Netherlands is a bit different, and we have to spend a minute just to explain this to you. So we have academic universities, which we call traditional universities, and then we have something called Universities of Applied Sciences, which is what the Hague University of Applied Sciences is. It's a mouthful. What it basically means is that we don't only focus on the academic part of the teaching and the learning, but that we do a lot applied. So what we do is actually we give students the theory and then we ask them to apply it. So we do a lot of simulation games. Down here, you see one of my groups from just about a year ago, actually simulating the European Parliament. On the top right, you see another one of my groups simulating a case before the International Criminal Court. So there's a lot of practical hands-on studying as well, which is a little different to the Dutch traditional universities, where you mainly sit in large lecture halls, your professor is up front, you take notes, you go home, you process this for yourself, and you reproduce on an exam. So it's a little bit of a different system here. Now that also means for us in terms of the European Studies program, and I'll pop all of these up at once because I'm probably not going to follow the order, is that next to being very international, we are also very interdisciplinary. So the program has courses from business and management going into the communication field as well, from politics and law, culture and society, a number of different languages, and lots of practical skills. So when you come to the Hague University, European Studies, you have a course catalog and you can pick from our side quite freely what it is that you wish to do. So then it very much depends on your home university, whether there are any requirements for you in terms of taking particular courses to get credit for. But we have students who might be taking marketing and might be taking European law next to that and might be taking the history of music in Europe and might also be taking Spanish. So for us, a course package can be quite as varied as you wish it to be. And I think that's a great advantage of the Hague University. We're quite flexible with that. We do, Corona permitting, a lot of field trips with our students. We have a lot of guest lectures, a great connection to the practical field and the work field in the Netherlands. So we take the students to the courts, we take the students to Brussels, we take the students out to see the windmills, we take the students to see the tulips. So from academic things to social things, usually we do a lot with you when you come on exchange. It's been a little different, but I think we all know why. Now, the interesting thing about our program is that all of our own students, so who come and join us for 3 or 4 years for a degree-seeking program, they have to go on exchange. That's a mandatory component, and they have to do an internship, which means because you're usually taking higher level classes when you come, so you're joining the classes in year 3 and 4 quite often. Our students oftentimes have been on exchange, maybe even to Oglethorpe. And so it's quite nice to connect with students that way because they've had the experience of studying abroad because they've had to go as well and wanted to go. They know what it's like to be in a country that's different, maybe for the first time, maybe, a couple of times already, but it's always a little bit of a jump in the cold water as you get here. And so in that sense, it's quite a nice student community that's very supportive of each other. Yeah, so these are our exchange partners. And then for us, the exchange students, and I get to say this because I used to be the coordinator for all incoming exchange students, are the absolute heart of European studies. we wouldn't know what we would do without our exchange students coming to join us, because they bring in all the color and the fun. There's so much life going on when we have students come and join us. We have sometimes as many as 90 to 160 students joining just our study program. That's a lot of students, and they come from 40 plus different countries. So it's a very, very beautiful, beautiful tradition for us to have that many students, and lots of activities are organized. Some of them more serious, some of them less serious. So you can see here, we always have a cultural fair where students cook and maybe dance or sing or perform a poem or anything from their own culture and their own country. Always good fun. You can see the US contribution up there. That is usually fries, mac and cheese, and muffins or cookies or these sorts of things, and a good game of beer pong, to be honest. And you can see in the bottom left, that's our girls from Spain a couple of years ago, for example. So there's always a very good student community, not only within and among exchange students, but especially also with our home students. A couple more pictures from exchange. You can see the British team. They won a couple years ago. They did a beautiful rendition of a British national song, Japan, and yeah, it's quite a cultural mix of students coming. So it's not a program where you're on your own. You're bound to make lots and lots of friends. Many friends stay for a lifetime. We've just had a group of students, exchange students, return after 3 years. They organized their reunion in The Hague. So your exchange in The Hague is usually 1 semester, unless you're deciding to stay 2 semesters, which means you'd be with us for about 4 to 6 months. And you either start in September or you start in February. It's usually a little later than the academic year in the US starts. The accommodation is offered by university. You see the red tower is one option, but we have lots of different options. But there's a caveat, you have to apply for it. And that's very, very important that you do so early on, because once we're back in full business with all the students on campus, we have a limited number of rooms. Preference is given to students from abroad, especially from overseas, but you have to apply on time. There is a registration fee, which in the end, if you don't take the room or don't get the room, you have a refund of that registration fee. We, of course, have entry and residence permit regulations, but these are things you can think of later on, and our university will walk you through it step by step. So there's always somebody there who will help you, and you get all the required documents from us in order to apply for the various different permits that you need. You have to have a health insurance, and because you come from overseas, you have to be insured with a health insurance from our university or one that we approve. That's quite important to know. And as I said, I think it's a quite fantastic exchange program that we do run. I'm a little bit biased, I'll grant that, but it is the heart of our study program. It's the thing that's most fun is the introduction weeks and the goodbyes and everything when everyone comes together and shares their different experiences throughout the semester. All right, we have lots of student community clubs, lots of activities, sport activities, sororities, language clubs, and so on. Some of them are program centered from European studies, some of them are university wide, and some of them might be at different campuses, but there's lots for you on offer. If you want to do judo or play tennis or want to, row, I don't know, rowing is quite popular in the Netherlands. Or if you wanted to learn a language, for example, you want to join one of the student clubs or the drama club or the choir, there are so many different options at university for you to be socially engaged as well. This is how the terms run, and I've already used the funny word. So we actually speak of terms, or in Dutch we call them blocks of studying, which means we have 2 semesters, semester 1, which is the fall semester, and semester 2, which is the spring semester. And in the fall semester, we have 2 terms, term 1 and term 2. And in the spring semester, we also have 2 terms, term 3 and term 4. And some courses will run over 2 terms, so they might be 12 weeks courses, and other courses will only run for 1 term, so they will be 6 weeks courses. And this is something to watch out a little bit as you're picking, because you don't want to have all your study load in 1 term and then have nothing to do in the other term. That might sound appealing for traveling, but it's not very clever, because we keep you very busy in the courses. So you're probably going to have a little bit of a mental breakdown if you take all of your classes in only 6 weeks. So you want to have a nice spread of classes. And that's quite important to realize. That might be different specifically to the classes that you take. Our classes are very different in shape and size. We have large lectures. You could have probably about up to 90 students is our maximum in a lecture, but you could have a seminar with as little as 6 or 7 people. This very much depends on the courses you pick. Some courses have both lectures and seminars, others only have lectures, others only have practical seminars, application, workshops, field trips, these sorts of things. And there again, from the 160 exchange students that we get, we have 160 different course choices and 160 different timetables. So it very much depends on what it is that you pick in terms of what your course package looks like and therefore your exchange. This is something I have to always mention. We do a lot of group work, and we love group work in the Netherlands, for better or for worse. Group work is absolutely fantastic when it works, and it does your headache when it doesn't work, and you're bound to experience both during exchange. There's no way around it, but it's something to be aware of. If you're a very solitary person that likes to just work on his or her own, you better pick courses that don't include group work. We mentioned so very specifically in the academic guide that you would get to see with all the course choices, like your course catalog, but you want to be careful with that. I think group work is fantastic, and that's where you learn the most, especially in such an international environment. You'd want to hear the opinions from different people and have a nice heated discussion about something to then agree, but that's a very personal thing. I do mention that always up front. The other thing we love are presentations, lots and lots of presentations, which is usually actually for students coming from the US, not at all an issue. You're very good speakers, you're very eloquent, you're used to speaking up, you're used to speaking your mind, you're used to raising your hand and stating things in the classroom, which sometimes for our Dutch students, they're a little bit more hesitant. They have a little bit of a higher threshold to get over in terms of presenting and speaking and sharing opinions. But I do put it on here because we value this a lot. We're a very open community. We want to hear everybody's opinions. We're very interested in all the opinions there are in the world. And for us, that's very important to have students speak up and for students to actively participate. Different kind of assessments. You can think of written exams, oral exams. We call things portfolios, reports, essays, papers, simulation games, group work things, projects, all sorts of things. This also, again, depends on the courses you pick. So if you have a preference, you say, I absolutely hate oral exams, I do very poorly in them, then don't pick a course that has an oral exam, or challenge yourself and specifically pick one on exchange, because that's the time to challenge yourself. Again, here, very personal choice for you to be made. The particular thing about the Netherlands is, in the education system, you always get a second chance. So if you fail something the first time around, you can actually resit it. However, there's a little bit of a but in here for you. You have to do it in a particular period. So if you're coming for the first semester in fall, the resets are in March, which means you're not going to be around in March, and most of you are not going to buy a plane ticket to come back. So the reset is there, but it might not be available to you because you're not physically present in The Hague. The grading system is very different to the US, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. We go from 1 to 10, with 10 being the best grade, 1 being the lowest grade. 5.5 is the pass. That's what you need minimum. Getting a 10 in the Netherlands is very difficult. Not with every teacher, because luckily we come from all over the world too, so we have different ideas as well. But usually the Dutch students think an 8 is like an A+. That's not quite the case of how it is usually converted in your own university system. But for us, oftentimes giving an 8 really means, wow, the student has done a really, really good job. And 9, you must be quite excellent, and a 10 is almost impossible. It's not totally impossible. I've given my fair share of 10s, but it's not a university system that easily hands out extremely good grades. So that's something as well for when you have a high GPA and you want to maintain, I don't know, maybe some of you have a 4.0 GPA and you want to maintain that. You want to make sure that, you know, you're able to get those 9s and 10s because you're going to be needing them. And they're possible, but you do have to work for them. So the Dutch system is quite strict in terms of that.
I just want to interrupt very quickly to make sure for the students that are listening, Oglethorpe, when we transfer grades back, we actually look to see that you've received a C- grade or better. And as long as you've received a C-, the equivalency of a C- grade or better, the credit is transferred. It does not actually count towards your GPA, because the value at Oglethorpe is that you go abroad, that you do, as Isabel is encouraging, and really challenge yourself and find a mixture of classes that are going to potentially not be available otherwise if you weren't studying at The Hague. And do the best you can in those classes to take full advantage of those opportunities. and not as much worry only about the grade that you're going to receive. So you do need to pass with a C- or greater, but you should not worry too much about your GPA because of our way of transferring credits.
Super, that's very good to know, and that's very good news as well. I'm always happy to hear that. We have some other partner in universities who look at this quite differently, and that can be a struggle on exchange. So I think exchange is also the time to not only academically excel, but also to engage in everything else that the exchange has to offer. Very good. In terms of teachers, I've already hinted at it. We have many, many international teachers, which means we have teachers from Malaysia, we have teachers from the US, we have teachers from the UK, teachers from Sweden, from France, I'm from Germany, the Netherlands. We've got a teacher from Ghana. So from all around the world, which means they all have their own rules and they all have their own ways of dealing with you. And you know that from your own teachers already, but our sort of distribution is quite global in that sense of our teachers, which means you can get some that want to be called Professor Doctor and are very formal, and others are quite happy for you to call them by their first name and to WhatsApp them if you have a question. My suggestion is always, you will find out very quickly in the first class what kind of teacher you have. And then this is the beautiful thing about it as well, is to adapt and to adjust and to just play along with it. Overall, we're very approachable. European Studies is like a little family. We're a big program, but we're still quite small. We know all of our students by name. We know all of their faces, even in Corona times, if they turn on their cameras at least. And for us, we really appreciate that family perspective. So we want students to come to us when they have problems. Now for you, I'm your first contact person. And I do encourage you to come with good news and bad news and all other sorts of news to me. And that usually goes for all teachers. Some of the experiences we've had from students coming to us, which are, I quite like the one from Theodora from Greece. This was her first day in the Netherlands, and she said her honest impression was that the Netherlands is cold. Poor Theodora arrived in February, so this time around of the year, and this was 2 years ago when we had a very tough winter. So it was actually very miserable and very cold. But Noelle, for example, from the US, Aurelia from Austria, Kunita from Germany, Mark from the US. So from all sorts of places, usually students are very excited about their time in The Hague. They have a very good experience and they like to share that. If you want to get in touch with a few students who've been with us, not necessarily only from Oglethorpe, but also from other places, I'm very happy to put you in touch. Of course, the reality of things is I'm presenting this beautiful picture to you, and right now we're all sitting at home, as you can see behind our desks, students and teachers alike. So 2020 has been a little bit of a tricky one, I'll be honest. In 2021, not so different so far, but we're really hoping that things shape up and that it will be different for the next academic year. This is what you need to be prepared for. I have to tell you this, I'd be lying if I didn't say this. You have to be prepared for a lot of questionable weather. We get gorgeous weather, beautiful time for the beach, usually somewhere between April and October. Our weather is beautiful, but November, December, January, February, and part of March are very questionable in this country, and they take a toll. So if you arrive in the middle of the spring semester or at the beginning of the spring semester, then it takes some time for you to warm up, quite literally, in terms of both the city, the country, the people, and everything, because it's just, it's just this kind of weather. It is this weather today, for that matter. Also, Dutch people are quite peculiar. They have funny traditions. This one here is one that we couldn't do this year, but on the 1st of January, almost half of Holland drives to the beach and they go and take a dive. It's called the New Year's dive in Scheveningen, which is just outside of The Hague. So the Netherlands has a lot of fun and very peculiar traditions. It's a small country with a lot of history, a lot of attitude, and a lot of culture, and it's very, very fun to experience. There's lots of information on the university websites, which I'm sure you know. And then I do think if you're really interested in it and you have social media, go have a look at the Facebook, have a look at the Instagram, get in touch with students who've maybe been here on exchange, with current students, our own students studying, looking also for exchange. Some of them might have questions about Oglethorpe that you can answer. I encourage you to be part of that community quite early on, even if you don't end up coming, but at least to have a look into the options. You can always contact me, that's my email. I'll pop it in the chat in a second as well. And for more general questions, you can contact the global office, the exchange office. Their email address has just recently changed. So that's a new email address here. But of course, you can always email me first. And if I don't know the answer, I will just send your email on to the global office. So you don't have to go there directly.